everyone, welcome to Curious People Wanted. I'm Dr. Daryn Reyman-Lock, the curator at the Barnum Museum here in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I recently started my position with the museum and thought it would be great to take you along with me as I start the process of getting to know Barnum, his friends, rivals, families, attractions, and employees, and the amazing collections at the Barnum Museum. An avid writer, Barnum is noted for his abundance of letters, penning his own newspaper, and publicizing his traveling shows, the American Museum, and later his Circus. From many of those manuscripts and pieces of ephemera, it's easy to associate him with the beginnings of popular phrases like the greatest show on earth and the noblest art is that of making others happy. However, there are a lot of phrases which seem to have been attributed to Barnum, even though they never actually were coined by him. The most famous of these is, "There's a sucker born every minute." There is actually nothing to substantiate that Barnum said that zinger. It seems instead to be associated with David Hannum, a New York banker. In 1868, cigar maker and trickster artist George Hull created a 10-foot long, 3,000-pound statue of a giant and had his brother-in-law, William Stubb Newell, bury it on his farm in upstate New York. Unearthed in 1869 by men hired to build a well on Newell's property, the giant was discovered to great fanfare. After it was revealed that the giant was a hoax, Barnum tried to negotiate with Hull, offering to lease the giant, create a touring schedule, and split the profits with him. Hull refused, and Barnum did the next best thing. He commissioned his own giant, a hoax of a hoax, and displayed it at his American Museum. By this time, our New York banker, David Hannum, had purchased the Cardiff Giant for $23,000. In today's currency, that amounts to over $500,000. Barnum's giant, however, was attracting much more attention. Hannum was furious and imposed a legal injunction to stop Barnum from exhibiting his fake. Their men are reported as meeting in court, during which time Hannum allegedly stated, "There's a sucker born every minute." Another phrase often associated with Barnum is "throw your hat into the ring." The story goes that this phrase was coined when, during a circus performance, a politician threw his hat into the circus ring to get showgoers' attention and announce his candidacy for a local office. Great story though this may be, it is also false. The term was used as early as 1804 when it was associated with boxing. A fighter would throw his hat into the boxing ring to signal he was up for a challenge. It became a figurative term by the 1820s and perhaps became popularized as a political phrase under Theodore Roosevelt Jr., a president who was himself an avid boxer in the early 1900s. Of all the terms that have been associated with Barnum, my favorite is probably jumbo. It's an eponymous word, which means it was derived from a name. For instance, a Caesar salad is named for restaurateur Caesar Cardini. The term boycott came from a land agent named Charles C. Boycott, and cardigans are so called because the 7th Earl of Cardigan wore such a sweater into battle. Jumbo was the name of an African elephant brought to the London Zoo in 1861. Because of difficulty housing the elephant, the zoo sold Jumbo in 1882 to Barnum, who marketed him as the biggest elephant in the world. By this time, the word jumbo already had started being used to signify something of unusual size, although it is likely to have been further publicized under Barnum's management. Other circus words attributed to Barnum, like big top, are also not his invention. It was first used around 1825 in the J. Purdy Brown Circus. This list of phrases that are for one reason or another associated with Barnum could continue for quite some time, but it brings me back to the question, are there any words or phrases actually coined by Barnum himself? There seem to be. And some of these are still very much used in vernacular English, including grandstanding, three-ring circus, and human cannonball. He certainly popularized other terms like humbug. In this case, he altered its meaning to be management tact, to take an old truth and put it in an attractive form. Before this, the original meaning, first seen in 1798, was to deceive, to impose on one by some story or device, and as popularized by Ebenezer Scrooge in Charles Dickens's 1843 novel, A Christmas Carol, a fraud or imposter. I'll leave you with the most Roald Dahl sounding invention, the wangdoodle. The word appears as early as 1856 in writing by William P. Brannan, and 6 years later in a letter from Mark Twain himself. The word is also included in a dictionary by 1877. I honestly have not been able to suss out exactly what a wangdoodle was and whether Barnum actually coined this word, but I can tell you periodicals suggest they are a specimen or creature that defies description. Maybe your kids know what they are, and if so, ask them to draw me a picture so I can possibly understand what they are. For fairness, Roald Dahl does use wangdoodles in his books and even states they are terrible and wicked creatures that feed on Oompa Loompas. I don't really want to think about that though, but I bet the song the Oompa Loompas sing is awesome. Thanks for joining me today for Curious People Wanted. Make sure to keep joining me as we discover Barnum together by subscribing to our channel, and remember to stay curious.